Hello everyone, welcome. So today we will be discussing about pollination, and before this in the sexual reproduction of flowering plants, we have already discussed about the parts of flower. We have discussed about microsporogenesis, wherein I am getting the pollen grains are getting matured. I have discussed about megasporogenesis. So this is the formation of the female reproductive part, which is embryo sac has been formed. Now the fourth part which comes is the transfer of pollens from the anther to the embryo or to the stigma of the flower. So, for this, the transfer is known as pollination. So, the pollens are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the flower. Okay, it may be the same flower, it may be different flower. So, this is known as pollination. So, based on how is the pollination occurring, I have if the pollination is occurring within the same flower, so anther of the same flower to the stigma of the same flower, I say it is self pollination or autogamy. Auto means automatic or self. Okay, gamete is nothing but the transfer of gametes which is taking place, hence the gamete. So this is known as self pollination or autogamy. Next, coming to if the transfer is taking place from the anther of one flower to the anther of to the stigma of another flower within the same plant. So here I have it is from different plant, different flowers of same plant. Then I call that as gatenogamy. So that is known as gatenogamy. And if the transfer is from anther of the flower from one plant to the stigma of a flower in another plant, it is completely they are unknown or foreign. The plants are foreign to each other. I say it is xenogamy. So there are three kinds of gamy or transfer that is there: autogamy, xenogamy, and gatenogamy. So these are the various transfers of pollen grains, how it is being transferred from one flower to another. We have it. Now, next coming to the when I talk about the self pollination, when I talk about autogamy, autogamy is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. So when it is in the same flower, I can have the flowers in two ways. I can have the flowers being closed. This is a pea flower of a pea plant. So I have the female anther and the male anther and the female carpel within the closed flower. Hence, I call these as cleistogamous flower. Cleisto, it is coming from the word claustro, are closed. So these flowers are closed and the pollination is taking place within the flower when it is closed. Okay, so now we have various examples. Viola is there, oxalis is there, all these things. Then we have chasmogamous flower, wherein the anthers and stigmas they are exposed. So there is a chance that there is a pollination that is taking place. Okay, so now these are the two different kinds of flowers when I talk about the autogamy which is occurring. It can be cleistogamous, it can be chasmogamous. It can be within a closed flower or it can be within an exposed flower. The anthers and the stigma, they are exposed. Next, coming to agents of pollination. So, for the agents of pollination, there can be abiotic factors, there can be biotic factors. Abiotic factors are wind, water, they are the abiotic factors, and biotic factors, they can be birds, insects, bats, which goes ahead with pollination. Now, first coming to wind pollination, the pollination that occurs by wind. So, if these are, the cotton or the corn cob, they are very much seen in and around. So, if we look at the pollen grains, how are the pollen grains? The pollen grains are light, they're non-sticky, and they're winged. You have a feathery appearance of the pollen grains. What about the anther? The anthers are well exposed so that they can get dusted anywhere on the stigma. And what is the stigma? They are large and feathery. The flower, it has one ovule arranged as inflorescence, just like a flower, it is there. What are the examples? We have corn cob, cotton, or date palm is an example of this. Next, coming to flowers which are pollinated or, pollination, water pollinated plants. So we have bryophytes or pteridophytes or algae, which are usually pollinated in water. So the pollen grains, they are protected by a mucilaginous covering so that it cannot get rot, or it cannot get some way disrupted because of water. So there's a mucilage covering which is there. So, for example, our Vallisneria, Hydrilla, all the seagrass, all those things. So, main feature of wind and water pollinated is they produce pollen grains in large number, and they do not produce any kind of nectar because there is no requirement for one to come and feed. So they will release the pollen grains, it will swim across, it will reach the stigma of the flower. So that is how it occurs. So the male is releasing out the stamen is exposed. So this is moving the pollen grains. They are going and they are falling onto the stigma of the flower. So only the thing is the male part or the pollen grains, they are having a mucilage covering so that the water cannot affect these pollen grains and they can be safe onto the stigma of the flower. Now, coming to insect pollinated flower, when I talk about insect pollinated flowers, then these flowers are very large, they're colorful, they have good fragrance, they are rich in nectar because bees or insects would come to suck the nectar from the flower and the pollens would get stuck onto their legs or anywhere. Okay, so the pollen grains are sticky in nature and stigma is as well sticky in nature. What is the rewards this kinds of flowers will have is the nectar and pollen grains which are edible in nature and they provide a safe place for laying the egg. For this example, I can have Amorphophallus or yucca or any kind of flower, hibiscus and everything. Now, coming to in case if we do not want the plants to go for self pollination, if we want to avoid self pollination, we go ahead and we use outbreeding devices. What are the various outbreeding devices we have? First and foremost, outbreeding devices, the flower is unisexual, say like papaya. So the flower, it prevents self-pollination because it is unisexual. It is having only male or the female part. Hence, self-pollination is not possible. That is unisexual. Next, I will have dichogamy. What is dichogamy? Dichogamy are when the pistil or anther, they do not mature at the same time. So there is a difference in the time of maturation. If we say it is protogyny, then the pistil would mature before the anther because protogyny in your first is the gyne that is coming, so the pistil is maturing first. If it is the anther which matures before the pistil, I say protoantry. So this is when I have dichogamy, both the gametes are present in the same flower, but they do not mature at the same time. Next, I have hercogamy. Hercogamy is there is a spatial separation of the anther and the stigma. In the same flower, the anther and stigma are, you know, they are far apart. There's a spatial separation that is there. Hence, there cannot be any self pollination that could occur. Then self incompatibility. So the genetic mechanism that prevents self pollination. So in petunia plants, there is no self pollination that occurs. The stigma itself prevents, or it always tries to inhibit its own anther, or it just does not want to recognize its own anther. Hence, self pollination is being avoided. So that's it. Just to brief you out about this, we talked about various kinds of pollination that occurs: autogamy, xenogamy, and gaetogamy. We talked about in autogamy, we talked about two different kinds of flowers, which is cleistogamous and chasmogamous. Then we talked about agents of pollination and what are the characteristics of the flowers, that is stigma, or the pollen grains that I have for various kinds of pollination, whether it is wind, water, or insect pollinated plants. Thank you.